What's up, race fans? Sorry we're a minute late there. Small technical difficulty. Welcome to our live stream show for the Monaco Indy 500 Coca-Cola 600 race weekend. It's the biggest race weekend of the year. We're super excited about it. GridRival is running not just these events, but on our paid pick'em game for those of you in the US. This weekend, we're also running NASCAR Craftsman Truck, NASCAR Xfinity, Formula E, and MotoGP. So we are doing a lot this weekend. It's going to be a busy one. As per usual, I'm joined with the GridRival team here, Ryan, Director of Business Development, and William Laddie, Principal Software Engineer, and I'm Mike, GridRival CTO. So we just wrapped up Monaco practice not too long ago, so we're going to jump right into it. First plug is on the app. For those of you in the US and states that we allow it, we have a $1,000 contest for the Monaco weekend. It works exactly the same as our leagues game does. You pick a lineup of drivers with a $100 million budget. Best lineup of fantasy points will then net you onto the prize table. The top 44 places on that pay table get paid out and win money. Currently, there's 102 people in that contest, or 102 entries in that contest, and you can enter that contest multiple times. So you could play 5 lineups, 6 lineups, 8 lineups, I think up to 10 lineups for this weekend. So get in there and have some fun. So we're going to kick it off with recap of practice. Ryan, William, anything from you on a standout note from practice that would have you thinking differently about your lineups, leagues, or DFS?
Well, I think we can go straight to the top of the grid. And this has got to be the first race in God knows how long that going into qualifying, Max is not favored to win. I can't remember last time I saw this. We've got Leclerc up top. It's probably right based on what we saw in practice and even a couple of races leading up to this, that Red Bull does look beatable. And of course, it's Monaco, so it all comes down to qualifying, and Leclerc has shown qualifying pace. So I'm really interested for qualifying tomorrow, see how it goes. But yeah, that was my biggest takeaway is just we haven't had excitement up at the top of the grid in a while, and it sounds like it's coming back.
Yeah, same here. Red Bull is beatable. There were a lot of other surprises, though, to where for the second race in a row, I have turned over 5 out of 6 spots in my lineup. And I was not planning to do that, but here we are. Like you look down the order, like Aston Martin has some pace, Mercedes has some pace. And there are a lot of potential opportunities there if that's how it pans out on race day. So this could be really chaotic, and throw in a chance of rain for qualifying tomorrow, and anything can happen. Even at the track that's like they get a bad rap like Monaco's boring. Hey, this is not a boring result so far.
Yeah, totally. In last year's Monaco race, we had rain, and that made Monaco a fantastic event. So rain plus Monaco equals just awesome racing, whereas otherwise it's a DRS train sometimes. But we do love the Monaco GP. So when it comes to leagues and DFS, we're always trying to optimize for cost. So especially on DFS, because you're only working with our DFS contest where you're only working with $100 million value. For me, the standouts in terms of like who might be underpriced this week based on what we saw from FP1 and FP2 would be potentially Alonso. He's down he's down 2.0, 2 million from last week to this week. And I think he was showing up well in practice. We don't know what the race modes, the engine modes they were running, fuel loads, but him and Stroll both looked pretty strong in the showing.
Agree. I think that chunk of drivers, because we have Piastri, Hamilton, Alonso, all in that kind of middle to high tier of salary, which for a while was kind of the stay away zone. People were probably packing their lineups with the guys at the top and then filling it in with the talent driver and then bottom drivers. But those guys are all very interesting this weekend. I think we've talked about Piastri a lot. I think he's the guy I'm still running. He still has room to increase. But like Hamilton, Alonso have been kind of stayaways for a little bit. I think they're showing value this weekend. I mean, I would rather run Hamilton and Alonso at their prices than someone like Sainz. Even Russell's a little more, but I wouldn't touch Russell over those two. And then obviously like Perez is the big stay away here. He's extremely overvalued. I mean, yeah, maybe he puts it together and looks better than he did in the practice sessions, but I would never ever run Perez, and I would drop him if he's in your lineup.
Yeah, I have 0 Red Bull representation in my lineup right now. In fact, I don't even have any Racing Bulls V-Carb, Toro Rosso, whatever we want to call them. I don't have any of that right now. And in fact, Leclerc is the only top tier anybody who appears in my lineup right now. He's the only guy I didn't dump, given the chaos that was Monaco. Yeah, I would say Mercedes is a great constructor to look at. Aston Martin, potentially, if you're looking to build value, if we think that Alonso and Stroll are both fast and like faster than where they are right now, Aston Martin is an intriguing choice at constructor. So I think those would be my 2 favorites right now. And it really comes down to, do we trust Stroll to not run into anything? Because they were buffing his front wing today. Like, they were buffing out a scrape that he had with the wall. And how often do you see that happening in F1? Like, this is starting to turn into NASCAR level repairs.
Yeah,
damaged vehicle policy coming into play.
Yeah, lots of duct tape being used. So Anthrox asked, which race y'all gonna watch?
Yes.
This crew here. Yeah, the answer is yes. So
Yeah.
to be perfectly honest, we won't. I'll speak for myself. I am not going to be able to catch the MotoGP race in Catalonia. I won't have the time for that. And I won't be able to catch the Formula E race because they're doing a double header in China this weekend. And this is our inaugural pick'em launch of both MotoGP and Formula E. So I won't be up for those. Every other race on the app from today through Sunday and or Monday, depending on weather, then yeah, I will be there.
Yeah, let's just hope. Yeah, I really hope Indy500 runs on Sunday, because that will just be one of the best days of the year. Wake up, you got coffee with Monaco, and then you start to roll into Indy500, and then like an entire case of beer for the Coke 600 at night. So
yeah,
that's my plan.
Yeah, and we got Emily. Any must pickups like Oscar last race? I think we hit on that a little bit with our general interest in Alonso. I think you have on the talent driver side of the fence, Tsunoda was looking good. Stroll, if he can keep it together, if he can keep it on the track, Lance Stroll, talent driver, is a meme. It's a vibe. It makes and breaks seasons at GridRival. You just have to get lucky on when you run them.
I will say, not to pat myself on the back a little bit, but I will. I threw out Albon earlier this week at a guy who nobody wanted at 9 million, and I was pretty happy with what I saw from him in the practice sessions. I think he looks better today than he did on Tuesday. So if I liked him on Tuesday, I like him even more today.
I have the same problem with him, or I guess the same concern with him as I do with Stroll. Do we trust him to not hit anything? Because it's Albon who's been breaking all the cars at Williams this year, not the other guy.
I mean, that's a concern, I think, with almost every driver on the grid, especially when you drop below 20 million on our app. So we'll see.
And as far as I know, they do have a spare now, so he's not going to get to steal Logan's car this time.
So I have a question. So this weekend, the GridRival team, we always host our own private contest, our own private paid contest. So if you in the app, click on the Daily Fantasy tab and then click on Create a Contest, you can create your own DFS contest to play with your league mates and to play with your friends and put some money on the line and get in on the action in a pool-based bet. There's different payout modes. You could have a sprint payout, a winner take all payout, or a 50-50 payout. We're doing a sprint. And I think in last week's pool, this was the top 3, right? Wasn't it the 3 of us?
I think I'd won it last week.
I think you won.
I
was third, I believe.
I think I was second. Yeah. So we're running it again for Monaco. Do any of you have a pro tip for setting your DFS lineup different from your league? Do you take your league lineup and put it into DFS and try and make the salary work, or how do you go about selecting a DFS lineup? How's it different?
For me, it's different in that anybody who is like a build value play, forget that. We don't care about value. We don't care. There is no tomorrow. There's literally no tomorrow, right? So it's purely who's going to get you the points, who's going to outperform if we're looking at the cheaper drivers, and then like, is there anybody at the top who's really going to deliver? Because the answer is often no. Like, like you can actually build a pretty good lineup out of midfielders, and my current lineup still subject to change. Right now, it's Leclerc, Hamilton, Stroll, Magnussen, Sargent, Mercedes. I may make some tweaks there. Like I am toying with the idea of going Aston and then making a driver upgrade with that extra 4.5 million. Like maybe Sargent becomes somebody like Ricardo or Albon. So yeah, still subject to change, but that's where my head's at right now with my F1 DFS. I've also got a NASCAR DFS lineup that we can get to a little bit later. Not that we're not actually running a NASCAR contest yet, but internally. But just for kicks, I made a lineup.
I think when it comes to DFS, like William said, it really is about maximizing points. I don't care about value whatsoever. And I kind of do, if you ain't first, you're last. Like in the words of Reese Bobby, like I'm running Lance Stroll talent driver. I'm not running that in a league. Like if he doesn't run into anything, I think that picks up a lot of points on everyone else because no one's going to want it. No one wanted Albon. Like I'm running Albon. I'm not sure what I'm going to do at the top of the grid yet, but it's really kind of a boom or bust strategy. It's like I either want to come in first and win all the money, or if I come in last, what's the difference between last or fourth place? It's all the same. So it's kind of a go big or go home strategy. And I think that's what I'd recommend for everybody else too.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. I find that playing DFS also helps you become a better leagues player in the sense that like it really helps you understand points generation and like how to maximize value with like a constrained budget because you only have 100 million to build your budget for that DFS weekend. So the more DFS I've played, the more I felt like I've become a better leagues player as well. It's just my own personal experience. Ryan, on the pick'em side of the fence, is there anything that you're liking on the app for Monaco?
I mean, I think just from these practice sessions, we've had a few things move. If you believe in Sergio Perez, you probably think that you're getting a bargain. I think we had him at 4.5 going into FP1, dropped him to 5.5, and then out of FP2, he's now down at 6.5 for his qualifying position. Not a ton of movement elsewhere. He was kind of the big faller. And then it's really what you think up top with, a lot of times we can't list Verstappen because he's just going to be in first place every single time. And what's the point of that? But we'll be having some stuff with Verstappen and Leclerc, 1.5, 2, 2.5, bouncing around. So I'm interested to see how that plays out and see where players are leaning that way. But that's kind of what I've been looking at. And then just some of the matchups I think are really interesting with those spreads moving around. When you get someone who's supposed to finish top 5 and then someone's a back marker, it gets thrown off a little because you might not have as many finishers in Monaco. You might see a little more variance. It's hard to overtake. It's just Monaco just runs a lot differently than these other races. And so you can find some potential edges in that.
Yeah, I love the Max Verstappen, Logan Sargent matchup for Monaco. That's it's important to have fun when you're also playing for money. And for anyone on the call who hasn't played Pick'em before, the way that it works is GridRival sets a finish position for quali and for race, and then you just select better or worse. So just taking an example from the top of the app is we have Lando Norris quali position 3.5. So the question is if you feel Lando Norris is going to quali ahead of 3.5 or quali behind 3.5, you make that selection and at least one more selection, enter your own entry amount, and then you can get in on the action for the weekend. And you could also build your pick'em entries across events and across sports. So if you're only feeling one F1 line, but there's a bunch of Indy lines you're interested in, you can combine all of that on one entry slip. So it's a really unique offering within the app. So highly recommend everyone check it out this weekend.
And it's fun too because everyone's always watching the action up top. Obviously, it's where the TV cameras focus. But, you're watching those qualifying sessions and, maybe you've got Albon at like 14, 15 and a half. Like that cutoff getting into Q2, like that's all of a sudden an exciting moment that, a lot of people might not be paying attention to, but you've got something on the line there, and you've got midfield, back of the field, you've got the front. Like there's always something going on throughout the entire grid, throughout the whole race and qualifying.
Yeah, love it. So we'll answer just a couple more questions, and then we could head into Indy unless anyone else has any other questions on F1. Seeing one here. Oh wait, sorry. Just missed it. I have Max, Lando, Oscar, Yuki, and K-Mag on my team. Thoughts? Would have to pay drop fees to change anyone. I have Max, Lando, Oscar, Yuki, K-Mag on my team.
I think I like that lineup. This is something I'm wrestling with too. I have Max for one more race, and it's like, do I want to pay the expensive drop fee? Because like right now, if you had to sign one, you would sign Leclerc over Max. He's probably projected to finish better. He's cheaper. But if you already have Max on your team, he might not be worth that drop fee. That's something I'm still trying to figure out. I might wait until third practice session to see what's going on there. But I think that's a pretty solid lineup. I like all those drivers.
Who's your constructor is what I wonder. I would consider moving on for Max. So the release fee is steep, but what's steeper than that would be the $2 million he could potentially lose if Monaco does not go well for him. So keep that in mind as well. You could actually lose more value. In fact, like I had at least one drop last week where my release fee was less than the value that guy ended up losing. So like it ended up a net positive. Yeah, Max is looking super vulnerable this week, and that's been building the last few races. So, like, if I'm dropping anybody, it's Max. And yeah, I see Mel in the chat with Max lineup and not a lot of budget. Max is eating up way too much of your budget, in my opinion, for what he's going to produce, especially this week at Monaco. Like this is where, like, if I'm just over 100 million. I am swinging for the fences as far as potential values. So maybe I have Alonso. You already have Stroll. Albon's a possibility to gain value. As far as constructor, if you can swing it, Aston's great. If you want to go all in on Aston, this seems to be the week to do it. Like Alonso, Stroll, Aston, like that could potentially be a big gain or a big loss. Well, actually, not a big loss for you if you only have 100.5 because of the salary floor, you'll never go below 100 million. So yeah, those would be the considerations as far as that lineup. I think you've committed too much of your budget to one driver right now. That would be my feedback there.
Yeah, completely agree. And best of luck getting out of 10th place. It's always tough to climb, but it feels like when you have momentum, you do keep going.
I think it's a little early for desperation mode, but in the next couple of weeks, you'll probably hit that where it's you got to start running talent drivers no one would run. You got to start looking at guys who lost all their value to sign them to 5-race contracts and hope for the best. So desperation time is coming. It's probably not here yet, but keep tuning into our shows and we'll give you some aggressive strategies to hopefully get you up up into the points.
Yeah. Who do you star if you have Yuki and Stroll? My strategy there is look at when the last time Stroll did poorly and when the last time he did well, because he seems to ebb and flow, boom or bust, peaks and valleys. So timing the Stroll peaks is super tough, but when it works really well. Yuki's definitely more reliable. A trick that I go for is look at the league adoption stats in your league and look, if there's 75% of your league has Yuki, you could assume that all of those people in your league are going to star Yuki. Same goes for same doesn't go for DFS there, but you might not be able to afford to not star Yuki because you want to keep up with the rest of your league. But that's also a great opportunity to do a contrarian play and star Lance Stroll because he might have a much lower league adoption. And if he outperforms Yuki or in fantasy points, you will rocket ahead all of your other teammates or league mates.
This being Monaco, if I can trust Stroll to go 80 laps or whatever it is without hitting the wall, I'm leaning Stroll based on pace. Qualifying is super important at Monaco. I think he can outqualify Yuki. And the further up you are, the less likely you are to be in a crunchy wing scenario on the start. Like, I do think there's going to be a lot of crunchy carbon as they go into those first few turns. You don't want to be mid-pack. You don't want to be in the back. You want to keep your car in one piece. And the higher up you qualify, the better chance you have at that.
Yep, Yuki. I'd say Yuki's the safer play. I would probably recommend doing Yuki, even though I'm banging the drum over here for Stroll. I'll be doing Stroll, but I want everybody else to pick Yuki. But actually, Yuki probably is the right decision. So I would recommend that you start Yuki.
Yeah. Yeah. Couple more here keep coming in. Recommendations on spending more for points scorer on a constructor like Ferrari versus a driver like Leclerc. Okay, now this one applies to both leagues and DFS. If you're trying to optimize a kind of blue chip investment, north of $25 million investment for a return on points, where would you want to go? Do you want to go driver or constructor? We'll make this a rapid round. My vote is driver. A driver is able to generate more points for you both in leagues and DFS. So I would spend more money on a driver over a constructor in either scenario.
I'd say constructor gives you a little bit less downside just because you have two cars. If one of them crashes, the other will still give you points. Whereas if your driver crashes, you're just out of luck.
I think it depends on who it is. I think I'm a little lower on Ferrari Sainz in particular this week. I think both Piastri and Norris will finish ahead of Sainz. I do really like Leclerc, so I would say Leclerc. If I thought Sainz was going to finish ahead of Lando, ahead of Piastri, then I'd say, go Ferrari because you like both drivers on that team. But for an example like that, where I really like one of them and I'm not as high on the other, then I'll just pick the driver.
Yeah, good advice. All right, we've got one more lineup review. I have Max, Yuki, and McLaren locked. Does that mean locked in or locked out? It says any suggestions to fill out for value. So I'm going to assume that you have Max, Yuki, and McLaren locked in, that they're in current contract. So you're already off to a good start. You tentatively have Alonso and Zhou and Sargent, but happy to scrap the last two. Stroll, Albon, and K-Bag are unavailable to me. We don't know your budget. Yeah.
He has Alonso, Zhou, and Sargent. So I'm guessing Zhou and Sargent are all he can swing after he gets Alonso.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, I don't know why you're taking Zhou and Sargent. And Zhou hit the wall today, and Sargent hasn't. Oh yeah, only 107 million budget. Yeah, that makes sense. You could consider moving from McLaren down to Mercedes or maybe Aston for one race if you want to free up some budget to do a little bit better driver wise. I think you're pretty top heavy. Like again, with another low budget with Max, where like he's not as much of a lock as he would have been a few races ago. Like I had Sainz Max for 5 races, like 4 races ago, and then I dumped him last week as he's become more vulnerable.
Yeah, and I think at price, Zhou is probably the last driver on the grid I would want to roster.
Yeah,
9 million is not that cheap. I think he's probably going to be hit between him and Sargent probably for last classified if they finish. And like I would, if you really think that Kick has something, I would sign Bottas in a heartbeat over Zhou. He's 4 million cheaper, and I don't think there's a huge discernible difference between them. If anything, Bottas is better.
Yeah, he's going to gain you value. Zhou's not.
Yeah, agreed. Your $107 million budget, you typically don't see lineups with a top constructor and a top driver together, both, north of 25 million on a single lineup until you have like a team value of like 120 at the lowest, 125 more preferably, then you kind of have the room to have two blue chip selections between your constructor, and your driver.
Yeah, look at Ricardo too. I think Ricardo's pretty good for the price he's at. 9.6, I think, is a steal for Ricardo.
Yeah. Okay, why don't we switch to Indy for a second here? And in the Q&A box, feel free to ask questions for any sport, no matter what we're talking about at the moment. We'll have happy to jump around. As just general motorsports fans, the Indy 500 is super important to us. The arguably most important race in America. Maybe William would argue with me on that, on Talladega, maybe.
No, give me Indy. Give me the
Okay.
Indy 500. Greatest spectacle in racing,
Yeah.
as they like to call themselves.
Yeah. So for this season, IndyCar is only represented in our app, in our Pick'em game. If we see really good engagement from players, both from who currently play our F1 season game and our F1 paid game, same thing with NASCAR, crossing over into IndyCar. If you have friends that are into IndyCar, tell them about GridRival. We'd love to build an IndyCar audience, because maybe in the future we would also build an IndyCar Leagues game or an IndyCar DFS game. But as of right now, IndyCar is represented within our Pick'em game. So why don't we talk a little bit about Indy? First would be just like a general FYI is, if it rains, it gets pushed from Sunday to Monday. That's a correct statement, right, William?
Depends on how much rain.
Yeah.
It could be delayed. I got it. Yeah.
Well, the other catch here is, like, it's actually some pretty severe weather that's going to move through Indiana. And if you have lightning within, I think it's 8 miles of the track, that's an automatic half-hour hold, because they gotta pull down everybody, on the roof, the spotters, tell people to get out of the stands, etc. So, like, the track could actually be dry and you could be delayed just because of lightning. Hopefully it doesn't come to that. Hopefully we get the race in on Sunday and we get it in time to where Larson can run the whole race and then get himself to Charlotte and then run that whole race.
Yeah, I think that's probably the place to start, right? That's one of the more intriguing storylines, and especially we're going to talk NASCAR later, but like, I'm very excited to see what Kyle Larson does here. He had an extremely strong showing in qualifying, which I guess shouldn't be surprising. The guy is extremely talented. You put him behind the wheel of anything, he's probably going to do really well at it. That being said, like, I hate to say it, I probably wouldn't back Larson at any of these prices that I'm seeing him at. He's like the third favorite to win the race, and I don't think that's correct. Also, he's listed as one of the favorites for the Coke 600, and I mean, there's something to, I think, driving 500 miles, getting on a plane, and then having to drive another 600 miles. Like, if anyone can do it, it's probably Kyle Larson, but I don't know if I would be backing him on that.
And he does have one of the best cars in Cup as far as the Coke 600. Hendrick and Gibbs are the teams to beat there. Well, more about that later. I would say, though, like, the three cars on the front row are all Penske cars, and like, they've got to be the favorites. I would also say Larson's sharing the row with one of his teammates, Alexander Rossi. I think Rossi probably has the edge on Larson as far as having more experience at Indy and in these cars. He's a past winner of the 500. If it comes down to fuel mileage, it's going to be him. That's how he took it in 2016. I was actually at that race. That was quite the show. Definitely recommend getting to Indy if you ever get the chance to. So I would agree that Larson's not a lock to win this race, but I think if he gets Indy 500 Rookie of the Year, almost certainly. And they have their own Rookie of the Year award. And I do think top 5 is very possible if he can avoid trouble.
Okay, well, currently he is on Pick'em at 8.5 race finish position. So you heard it here, folks. You from William himself. He's bullish on that. He's on the better side of 8.5.
I haven't actually looked at that line. I am not hovering over these lines like during the day. Like, I have my actual job that I do, but nor do I play this game. But
well, that's good, because you're not allowed to play that game. So
no, I'm not allowed to play this game. That's for everybody's benefit. Like, if hypothetically, if you offered me Larson better or worse than 8.5, I would probably go better myself. My only concern would be whether throwing a wrench into it. Like, I think that's your biggest risk, actually. So fun facts: at some point, IndyCar decided not to allow relief drivers. So, like, if you had a delay and he had to go to Charlotte, they would just have to retire the car. Not like in past years when somebody would do the double and something like this would happen, and they could use a relief driver, but you don't even get that anymore.
Yeah, I just really hope this. I hope this weather holds off. Like, I want to see. I want to see him do the double. I want to see no issues. I want to see everything go smoothly. I'm excited for a full day of racing Sunday, and I really hope Indy 500 gets in at the appropriate time slot versus having to either wait or go on Monday.
Yeah, failing that, I hope they pull the plug earlier rather than later, like NASCAR did with Daytona this year. Like, they called that rain out pretty early. Yeah, especially I know there's a lot of reasons IndyCar wouldn't want to do that, like TV, for example.
Yeah. So they probably won't do that at all then.
Yeah. But not to mention, like, 300,000 people are probably not going to show up on Monday and buy their concessions and all that. Probably a smaller crowd.
Oh, yeah.
300,000 people. That is the largest sporting facility on the planet, by the way. Indy Motor Speedway, for those of you who don't know.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, like, they have the largest capacity of any sporting facility, as far as I know.
Yeah, that'd be tough. And then you want to see that place full too.
Yeah,
I guess I would imagine. Really, I would imagine that they lift. Do they lift the blackout if they have to run on Monday and it's clearly not going to be a sellout?
I don't know. I think TV blackouts are very antiquated anyway. I wish they would just go away forever.
I could go on a rant on that for the next hour, so we should probably move on.
Yeah. But that was funny, though. Like, the first time I went to Indy, like, I was there, I saw the race. It was 2011, the year that Hildebrand hit the wall coming out of 4. And I get back to my hotel, and the race is on in my hotel. Like, oh, yeah, they black it out here, don't they? Like, you got to wait hours.
But, yeah, I think you guys have a winner for the race.
Winner for the race. I guess I'll start. My pick is I'm going to be the front runner. I'm going to say Newgarden. Penske's have the pace, and I think there's a bit of a chip on their shoulder from the scandal that we had at St. Petersburg, to where they want to prove that they can win legit. So I would say Newgarden, and then if it could not be a Penske driver, probably Rossi. Pretty boring pick. He's on the second row. And yeah, I just think that he's the best of the rest.
I like the Rossi pick. I'm going with Rossi a little, not too risky, but a little off the board, not quite a favorite. I actually found earlier this week was one of my favorite things I found was car number of the winner under 9.5. So that gives me Newgarden, McLaughlin, Pato, I guess Dixon if he makes his comeback through the field, and then Rossi. And that was at even money. So that was one of my favorite bets. So I will be rooting for all the low-numbered cars when they all go off on Sunday.
Yeah, that seems like a really good pick. I'm glad we don't have that, because we'd be giving money away.
Yeah, I gotta dodge Power and Pelot, and I threw Larson out immediately. That's one of the other guys I have to dodge, but I figured I'm not too worried about that. But we'll see. So now Larson will win, but that would still be fun.
I was going for Will, the least scandalous Penske driver of the scandal.
Yeah, the guy who said, "I knew the rule, I didn't hit the button." Respect to him.
Yeah. I don't know. Socially, if Newgarden does win, what that will look like on the internet, I don't know. But obviously, Penske's looking like a favorite, across the board. So I'm I'm outwardly rooting for Will as the the Penske driver who did the right thing throughout the entire scandal and wasn't caught up in it. So I'm going Will for the win.
Yeah, and I recommend, if people didn't tune in to qualifying, make sure you do that next year. I haven't watched a ton of Indy 500 qualifying sessions in the past, and it was a lot of fun. If you think it's like NASCAR qualifying can be a little bit boring, this does not feel like that at all.
I miss the old format where you got to make more runs. Like, that was even more dramatic than what we have now. And I wish we'd have a few more entries. Like I wish they could make things work with the engines to have a few more entries and have a bit more intrigue with the bumping. Like our intrigue this year was Marcus Ericsson failing to count to 4 and having to make another run because he failed to count to 4 and got off of it after lap 3.
Yeah, you need 4 of them.
Give me 4 good ones. That's what Barnhart always told them, like right before they go on the run. Like if you watch qualifying back in the day, like the old head of IndyCar, yeah, he'd give them a speech before they go on the track, and yeah, 4 good ones, not 3 good ones.
Yeah. I in the matchups part of the pick'em game, I tend to go for the drama and the humor as like what draws me. And we have a Grosjean Ferrucci matchup, which I think is perfect. For those of you not in tune to Indy as much or just getting into it, I highly recommend that you get into it as a motorsports fan. Watching, I've said several times this season, just watching the Indy races, that a lot of what F1 fans are looking for in terms of an on-track experience is happening every weekend in Indy. It is hilariously exciting. If you've never tuned into it before, tune into it. And peak drama, former Haas driver Roman Grosjean, who's not doing that great in Indy, just to put it candidly right now. Even though he was an F1 driver, now driving at Indy, it doesn't directly translate to instant success, top of the grid. Having a hell of a beef with Antonio Ferrucci. So those matchups are always the best for me.
Yeah, Grosjean doesn't necessarily have the best equipment either. Like he's sort of like steadily downgraded to where he's now driving for Juncos Hollinger, which definitely towards the back of the grid. And that team had some drama last year with his teammate and his fans. And yeah, IndyCar and drama.
Yeah, and then we also have a Takuma Sato line versus Kyle Larson.
Their respective histories.
Oh, sorry. You had a delay there, William. I didn't mean to talk over you.
Yeah, my internet is occasionally just eating like 5 seconds of speech.
Oh, okay. The other matchup I like on our matchups board is Takuma Sato versus Kyle Larson. Again, former F1 driver, former 2-time Indy 500 winner, right? Sato was 2 times. William
Williams, the
Pros.
encyclopedia here. Yeah.
Twice. Yeah. Sato won it twice.
Yeah. Versus the NASCAR driver. That's awesome. That's something I would want to play all day. So
Sato's 47 and he put that thing in the fast 12.
Yeah.
And he easily beat his teammates. Like you had Graham Rahal sweating whether he'd make the field, and then you had Sato in the fast 12. How does that work? Whose name is on the team? Not Sato's.
Rahal.
Yeah. So if I could play matchups, pick them this weekend, I'd be playing the Grosjean Ferrucci line and the Sato Larson line. I think those are a lot of fun to be able to engage with the race with on the pick'em game. I would have the most fun with that. All right, so I want to transition into NASCAR.
Yeah, we could take this from one beef to the other. We had punches thrown after the All-Star race. Speaking of, we have the Stenhouse Busch matchup for NASCAR, and I was, the All-Star race was largely not the most exciting thing in the world. I had it on the second screen. I was watching playoff hockey, but then I look over and all of a sudden I see punches being thrown and just pure chaos. So pretty quickly I had to put that one on the TV. That was fun.
Have you seen the new Twitter profile photo for Bob Pockris?
Yeah.
The reporter who got a piece of that incident.
Yeah, poor guy.
Yeah, that was something. Ricky Stenhouse is the last person who should be complaining about getting run into. Just saying. Yeah, he's had a bit of a reputation his whole career for crashing. And a little drama with him and Busch. And we'll see if that continues to be a thing as we go through the season. Like, I don't know that you'd see much retaliation at Charlotte, but maybe when we get to the next short track.
Yeah. would not be surprising.
Yeah.
Because Bush famously can have a little bit of a temper himself.
Yep.
And I don't think he took too kindly to getting punched in the face. He's not going to let that one go.
For at least the second time in his career. He's been punched before.
Yeah.
Yeah. Forgot to mention as we transitioned over to NASCAR for anyone who plays on the app F1 only, a little helpful tip. If you're into NASCAR but didn't get into the app for the start of NASCAR, you could start a NASCAR league at any point with you and your friends. So if you go over to the leagues portion of the app and create a new league for NASCAR, you could do that. There's also a bunch of public leagues available with some NASCAR influencers that they have a ton of fun in their league. So get into a NASCAR league. For the Coca-Cola 600, we are running $1,000 in prizes on the DFS side of the fence. So same as F1 is where you could just set a lineup. The only difference is instead of 5 drivers, 1 constructor, it's 6 drivers. Since constructors aren't as big of a thing in NASCAR from a points perspective. So also a lot of fun. So you can get into that contest, get checked quickly. I think right now it's a little bit lower than the F1 one. It is sitting at, there's 54 of 220 entries in there. And again, it's multi-entry. So you could throw 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 entries in there and top 44 places pay out. So you can get in there and win some money. And then of course, on the pick'em side of the fence, we have not just the Cup Series, we also have NASCAR Truck and Xfinity. We're running all 3 races this weekend. So Truck, Xfinity, and Coke 600 all on the app. And again, you could create a pick'em entry across all 3 of those. So if you want to run an all NASCAR entry slip where you have a truck selection, a Xfinity selection, and a Cup selection, go for it. It's a really unique part of the app. We had another question. Back to F1 for a second, but 14 million in the bank, need 1 driver with Stroll and Ocon locked. 14 million in the bank. Let me switch back. 14 million in the bank.
We don't have Stroll. We don't have Ocon. Okay. We can work with that. What about Albon?
Yeah, it's a lot of left over.
And that's a lot left over. But like, if we're dealing with 13 million and we're presumably not going to release anybody that's in our lineup already. I think Albon is the best option sub 13 million. And that does leave you some room in the bank, but the object is not to use every last dollar. The object is to get yourself the most points, set yourself up for the most value going forward. You're willing to risk either Albon or Gasly. I like Albon better than Gasly.
For sure.
I do too. I didn't love what I saw from the Alpines. Also, I don't know. Maybe they came out and said everything's resolved, but like Gasly did have a power unit issue in FP1, and that's always a little scary. You never know what's going to happen with those things. Even without that, I didn't really love what I saw from a pace perspective out of him anyway. So I would go with Ricciardo or Albon over it. But if you like Gasly, you like Gasly.
Monaco's not even a horsepower track, and we're having engine problems.
Yeah, I think I would lean Ricciardo. Monaco, especially if it rains, you want experience, which Ricciardo can brings to Monaco. He's been doing a little bit better recently, so it might not be like as potentially. If Albon performs well, he just lost 2 million in value. You can make some of that up real quick in as short as 1 or 2 races if he performs. But you already have Danny Rick as talent driver. Okay, so you have Danny Rick as talent driver. Then you're looking at Albon and Magnussen in my book, and I would probably just go for Albon. He's on a little bit of a value right now with just recently being down 2 million. So that's where I would go.
Back to NASCAR. Anybody have thoughts about a hypothetical NASCAR DFS lineup? I've got one myself.
Go for it, William. Show me what you got.
Start there. Okay. So right now, I'm a little subject to change. I'm kind of Gibbs heavy here. The way the values have shaken out this year in the NASCAR game, like they've all just sort of consolidated towards the middle to where you're actually not all that top heavy, unlike F1. That's also partially because NASCAR, you get a lot of different winners. It's not the same couple of people up front every week. So right now I've got Denny Hamlin, William Byron, Martin Truex Jr., Christopher Bell, Corey LaJoy, and Zane Smith. Bell being my talent driver. He is just a bit under that 18 million threshold. Anytime I can get a Gibbs driver as talent driver, that's a pretty good bet in my book. Like I said, kind of Gibbs heavy. I may consider swapping one of these guys for, say, Chris Buescher, if we think the Roush Fenway comeback is real. We saw Keselowski break through and win a couple weeks ago. And we saw Joey Logano win in a Ford last week. Bit of an asterisk because supposedly he had like 800 laps on the soft tires that nobody else had. Penske meets scandal again. You got to love the way they do the tire testing, though. It's if you're the lucky one, you get a huge edge. So yeah, right now I've got 3 Gibbs drivers and a Hendrick driver, and then LaJoy, and then the guy who's last because that's all I could afford.
I was going to ask if you were running Zane Smith just because that was like that. Basically...
That's exactly why I have Zane Smith. It's not because I'm optimistic about the 78's performance. Yeah, so the way the NASCAR points tend to work out, like, it strongly favors the people who are going to be up front all day, getting the stage points, getting the good results. We don't have improvement points in the NASCAR game. We don't have teammate points in the NASCAR game. So it's much more weighted towards race performance. And also keep in mind, Charlotte has 4 stages, not 3. So there are more stage points on offer as you're setting your lineups. So if you think somebody's going to be running top 10 more often during the course of the race, that's a consideration as you're setting your lineup. So that's what I've got right now. And I'm happy to hear other opinions.
Yeah, I can throw out, I will say, for as poor as some of my F1 takes have been this season, I wish we were doing a weekly NASCAR show because I would just be coming on and taking victory laps every week. My 2 league entries are 1st and 3rd on the global leaderboard out of everybody. So NASCAR has been pretty good to me this year. I think right away, I mentioned fading Larson, which I would not recommend almost any other week, but just with everything going on, like I won't be running Larson this week. I will be running Hamlin. I'm high on Denny Hamlin. A couple other guys I would look at. I think Ford might be back. They started the season off. It was pretty atrocious. But we've started to see a little bit of pace there. I think a guy like Blaney is undervalued at this point. I think he started as the most expensive driver. Now he's all the way down to 19. Like, I think that's a great deal. William mentioned Buescher.
Championship last year. He was the most. Yeah. He won the championship. That's how he did it.
Yeah. Buescher, I'm really high on Buescher this weekend. I think he lost almost $2 million in value, but like he probably was going to win that race. Not the All-Star race, but the one previous. Obviously got wrecked by Reddick. Like, I think that car has pace, and Buescher has been, I mean, talk about heartbreak. It's almost like he's owed one from a narrative perspective after that close loss and then getting wrecked with 4 or 5 laps ago. I forgot exactly when it happened, but it was right near the end. So I do like Buescher from a talent driver perspective. Like, I agree with William. I'm running Chris Bell. He's 17 something. And I think he's just, anytime Chris Bell is talent driver eligible, I'm pretty much running him without fail. And then a little further down the board, I've got Gregson locked into a contract right now. He's been pretty strong. And again, another Ford. And then I don't know who I'm going to go with yet I have like 12 million left over to fill for that last spot, but I'll get that one figured out. But I think those are the names I'm looking at up top. And then one other Ford would be Logano. He's at 16 right now. He lost, I think, $500,000. But I think Ford has some pace now, and I think Logano is just too good of a driver to be down at that price range.
Yeah. I think I'm going to completely redo my lineups after listening to you guys. I'm not even going to say what I was there. I was way off. NASCAR is not. I've been trying so hard in the NASCAR game this season, and I have made very little progress. And Ryan, you're the top global player, right? In NASCAR, that's insane.
Yeah. To be fair, a lot of these races are, well, not a lot of them, but like I got very lucky on the super speedways. Like, I somehow avoided all of the wrecks, that's all luck. But and then just strong performances elsewhere. But there's a lot of luck mixed into that.
Whereas, like, I lost my talent driver 5 laps into Daytona this year.
Yeah, exactly.
And I had Buescher at Kansas, and like you said, like if he didn't have that collision with Reddick going for the lead, then like
He probably wins that race.
we got more points, and that's just how NASCAR is. You get a bit more of that than you do with some other series. Winner picks.
Winner picks. You want to start us off, William?
Sure. I'm leaning towards Chris Buescher. Like, I do think he's going to break through. I think Roush Fenway Keselowski's been one of the teams to beat in the last month or so. If it's either him or I'll give you an oddball choice, Ty Gibbs. Joe Gibbs Racing, again, like they're a top team, and the Coke 600 has a way of producing some first-time winners. Like, there's a lot of first-time winners that have been in that race for whatever reason. And that could happen again. So if you want an underdog, that would be my. If you can call Gibbs car an underdog, like that would be my choice.
You could call him an underdog. He's sitting anywhere like 18, 20 to 1. It's a solid little payout right there. I think I would go. I know Blaney won here last year. I think he has not had a season that he is very happy with at the moment, but I do think that the Fords are starting to run a little better. And I like Blaney here, priced 8-10 to 1 or so. And I guess if you're going to go a little further down the board, I did mention Logano, who you can get in the 20s, which I think is insane. But yeah, if I had to pick one, it would be Blaney. So I guess my trifecta is Leclerc, Rossi.
Oh, okay.
And all three,
Yeah.
the trifecta, and then Blaney. So we'll see how that one goes.
Yeah, I didn't give my F1 winner pick. I'm gonna throw you a curveball, and I might upset you, Ryan, as far as the pick'em numbers, but Hamilton. I'm gonna say Lewis Hamilton wins the Monaco Grand Prix. He was looking good in practice today, and honestly, I don't trust Ferrari to not screw it up, especially with Leclerc having a new race engineer like that. I think that didn't get as many headlines as it should have, but as of last week, Charles Leclerc has a new race engineer, so there could be issues there on top of the usual Ferrari shenanigans, and Hamilton for the upset. That's my pick. And then Newgarden and Buescher were my other choices.
Oh. Hamilton for the win is a wild recommendation. You should have brought that one up earlier. That's a wild recommendation.
It is wild.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, from a points perspective, if he did win, not only would he obviously be first in fantasy points for the weekend, I think he would score the most amount of fantasy points possible between improvement points, teammate points.
Yeah, depending on how Russell does, depending on how qualifying goes.
Yeah.
But he'll probably have to qualify well to win the race, unless something happens with the safety car.
That's true, but I think
you get a safety car or a red flag at the right time or the wrong time, and somebody gets a pit stop for free.
Yeah. Toto was saying in the interview with I think it was Will Buxton right before, he was like, yeah, we're not bullish on this race at all. We've never done well here. Even when we were in top form, we've never done well here. And then Hamilton put down, top of the grid. I think he went top of the grid with every tire, like top 3 with every tire compound.
Yeah, this morning it was 112, 169, and that was top of the charts. Second practice, 111, 466. I saw online Verstappen's pole time last year was something like 111.3 something, which Leclerc pipped that in second practice today.
He was like 111.2, right?
Yeah, so Hamilton front row seems viable.
It could be, and he just went up 1.5 million the last race. He was heading towards talent driver eligibility, but I think we showed it on the show earlier this week that his value has only been going up the past few races. So if he stuck it in the top 3, the top 4, I think even the top 5, he would go up a pretty significant amount now. I think if he's in the top 4 in fantasy points, I think he would probably go up 2 million from where he's at now to where he would be.
Right. And, Mercedes hasn't always had the strongest car, but I don't think that if he qualifies well, which he clearly shown that he can, no one's passing anyone in Monaco to begin with, but especially no one's passing Lewis Hamilton. Lewis Hamilton's not going to make a mistake. There are guys that might make a mistake and get passed, but I wouldn't think Lewis will. It just all comes down to strategy, which Mercedes kind of knows what they're doing. So
there was that one year that Hamilton didn't win because he decided to call his own pit stop. But we'll forget that ever happens.
Yeah. We're getting towards the end of time here. If anyone has any last minute questions, throw them in. My top 3 are Leclerc, which I have $10 on for pole in quali and for race win, going for the double on that. And then on Indy Willpower, just because Team Penske with the ethical Team Penske member. And then 4th, I'm going for Kyle Larson. How could you not want to, try and get that to happen? That would be incredible. To do well, to show well earlier on, and then come back and win it. I'm all about that. So I'm going for Kyle Larson for the win.
Go ahead.
I don't know how likely it's going to be. To your point earlier, Ryan, that's a lot of driving to do. That's how he's got
1,100 miles. Yeah. And to be clear, I am fading Kyle Larson, but I really hope, I hope I'm wrong. I would love to be wrong. I would love to see Kyle Larson win the Indy500, win the Coke 600, be an amazing story. It's I am rooting for it. It's just not something that I see happening. And especially if you are betting on these things, he is extremely low priced in both races. And I think that is not the best use of capital.
It would be an all-time great moment in the history of motorsports if he could pull that off. Or even top 5, both of them. Yeah, I am also skeptical as to him winning either of them, let alone both of them.
And then I guess if any of our Indy picks win, on our next live show, we have to dump milk on ourselves. So are you doing whole, 2% skim? What's your choice?
I'll go the whole milk.
I think you got to go whole milk.
Yeah.
There's a couple skim milk choices this year.
I mean, you were supposed to drink the milk, but people started pouring it on themselves for some reason, which is gross.
Yeah.
I don't know if the last thing I feel like I'd want to drink after 500 miles in an Indy car is milk.
Yeah,
it's a bad choice.
Yeah, and but I get actually even though your taste preference would be whole, to go with the lowest percentage possible. So because you're chugging it and pouring it on yourself, so I want the most water content. All right, so that's wrapping us up on time. There's no other questions. Thanks everyone for joining. Hope everyone has a great race weekend. Reminder, get into those DFS contests if you can. If you haven't played Pick'em before, get in there. It's a lot of fun. Leave an app review if you're enjoying the app. If you have any questions, email us at support@GridRival.com. And as always, subscribe on YouTube for us because we're doing these shows on a more regular basis moving forward. Thanks, everyone.